Daughter of single-father janitor answers a call and saves millionaire woman from fake contract. Before we start, I love seeing this community grow. Feel free to introduce yourself below. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead in the 42nd floor of Sterling Tower, casting harsh shadows across the marble floors that 6-year-old Emma Rodriguez had been quietly observing for the past 3 hours. While her father Marcus methodically cleaned the executive offices with his industrial vacuum, Emma sat cross-legged beside the massive mahogany desk, coloring in her Disney princess book with the concentration of a surgeon. Marcus had been the night janitor here for 3 years now, ever since the divorce left him struggling to make ends meet and fighting for custody of his precious daughter. Every Tuesday and Thursday night, when his ex-wife Jennifer worked her evening shifts at the hospital, Emma would tag along to the gleaming offices of Sterling Enterprises. She'd learned to be invisible, to stay quiet, and to never touch anything important. "Daddy, why does this office smell like expensive perfume even when nobody's here?" Emma asked, her crayon poised over Cinderella's gown. Marcus chuckled softly, emptying the pristine wastebasket. "That's because very important people work here, sweetheart. People who make big decisions and wear fancy clothes." The phone rang suddenly, its shrill tone cutting through the peaceful silence like a knife. Emma's head snapped up, her dark eyes wide with curiosity. The caller ID displayed Sterling Victoria Mobile in bold letters. "Don't touch that, Emma," Marcus warned gently, but he was across the room, tangled in the vacuum cord. The phone rang again, and again. Emma had been taught never to answer phones that weren't theirs, but something about the desperate persistence of the ringing made her stomach flutter with worry. What if someone needed help? What if it was an emergency? On the 7th ring, her small hand reached for the receiver. "Hello?" she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Oh, thank God, someone's there." The voice was breathless, panicked, unmistakably feminine. "This is Victoria Sterling. I need to speak with my assistant immediately. There's been a terrible mistake with the Morrison contract signing tonight." Emma's grip tightened on the phone. There's nobody here except me and my daddy. He's cleaning." "Cleaning? What time is it?" Victoria's voice cracked with desperation. "Listen, sweetie, I know this sounds crazy, but I need your help. Can you see any papers on the desk? Big, important-looking papers?" Emma's eyes scanned the immaculate desk surface. There, under a crystal paperweight, lay a thick document with "Morrison Acquisition Confidential" stamped across the top in red letters. "I see something that says Morrison," Emma said carefully. "Oh my God, yes. Listen to me very carefully. I'm stuck in traffic 20 miles away and I just got a call from my lawyer. The man I'm supposed to meet tonight isn't really from Morrison Industries. He's a con artist who's been planning to steal my company for months." Emma's heart began to pound. She'd watched enough movies with her daddy to know that bad people sometimes pretended to be good people to trick others. "What should I do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "There should be a number at the bottom of that paper. Can you read numbers?" "Yes, ma'am. I'm in 1st grade and I'm very good at reading." "Perfect. What's the number?" Emma carefully lifted the paperweight and read the digits slowly. 55500147. "That's it. That's the fake number he set up. The real Morrison Industries number ends in 0184. Sweetie, you just saved my entire life's work." Marcus finally freed himself from the vacuum cord and rushed over, his face pale with concern as he saw his daughter on the phone. "Emma, what are you doing?" She looked up at him with tears in her eyes. "Daddy, I think I just helped stop bad people from stealing this lady's company." Marcus took the phone, his hand shaking. "Ma'am, I'm so sorry. My daughter shouldn't have answered your phone." "Sir?" Victoria's voice was thick with emotion. "Your daughter just prevented the biggest financial disaster of my life. I'll be there in 30 minutes. Please don't leave." Marcus stared at the phone in his calloused hand long after Victoria Sterling had hung up, his mind reeling with disbelief. In 3 years of cleaning these offices, he'd never imagined he'd be thrust into the middle of some corporate drama that sounded like it belonged in a Hollywood thriller. "Daddy, did I do something wrong?" Emma's voice was small, worried. She'd climbed down from the leather chair and was now tugging at his uniform pants with paint-stained fingers. "No, sweetheart. I think you might have done something very right." He knelt down to her eye level, brushing a strand of dark hair from her face. "But we need to be very careful now, okay? Important people are coming and we need to make sure you're safe." Emma nodded solemnly, her 6-year-old mind processing the gravity of the situation with surprising maturity. "The lady sounded scared, Daddy. Like when I have nightmares and call for you." Marcus's heart clenched. Since the divorce 2 years ago, Emma had developed an acute sensitivity to people's emotions, especially fear and sadness. Jennifer always said it was because the child had witnessed too many arguments between her parents, but Marcus suspected it was something deeper, an intuitive gift that seemed to guide his daughter toward people who needed help. 28 minutes later, the elevator doors opened with a soft ding, and Victoria Sterling stepped into the office like a force of nature. She was nothing like Marcus had imagined. Instead of the cold, calculating businesswoman he'd envisioned, she was young, probably not much older than 30, with auburn hair disheveled from running and mascara slightly smudged around green eyes that sparkled with unshed tears. She wore a navy business suit that probably cost more than Marcus made in 2 months, but her designer heels were in her hand, revealing runs in her stockings from rushing through the building lobby. "Where is she?" Victoria's voice cracked with emotion as her eyes searched the room. Emma emerged from behind the desk where she'd been hiding, suddenly shy in the presence of this glamorous stranger who seemed to command the very air around her. Victoria dropped to her knees immediately, not caring about her expensive suit meeting the office floor. "You must be Emma." The little girl nodded, stepping closer with cautious curiosity. "Emma, do you understand what you did tonight?" "I helped stop bad people from taking your company," Emma replied matter-of-factly. Victoria's composure finally cracked. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she reached out tentatively, as if asking permission before touching Emma's small hand. "You saved everything I've worked for since I was 18 years old. Everything my father built before he died. You saved 10,000 people's jobs. You saved my entire life." Marcus watched this exchange with growing amazement. This powerful woman, who probably commanded boardrooms and made million-dollar decisions daily, was crying in gratitude to his 6-year-old daughter. "How did you know it was a fake number?" Victoria asked, her voice steadying as she regained some composure. Emma tilted her head thoughtfully. "You sounded like my mommy did when she found out Daddy's friend Tommy was lying about borrowing money. Sometimes grown-ups' voices get shaky when other grown-ups are being mean to them." Victoria looked up at Marcus with wonder. "She has an incredible instinct for reading people." "She's always been like that," Marcus admitted. "Sometimes I think she understands people better than most adults do." Victoria stood slowly, her business demeanor returning as she processed the full scope of what had almost happened. The man who was supposed to meet me tonight had forged documents, fake credentials, everything. He's part of a sophisticated corporate espionage ring that targets family-owned businesses during vulnerable transitions. She pulled out her phone, dialing rapidly. "Detective Morrison? It's Victoria Sterling. We have a major development in the fraud case. Yes, they were planning to execute tonight. No, the signing never happened, thanks to an unexpected guardian angel." Emma giggled at being called a guardian angel, and Victoria smiled through her tears. "Marcus," Victoria said after ending the call, "I need to ask you something important." Victoria's question hung in the air like morning mist, heavy with unspoken possibilities that would change everything for Marcus and Emma Rodriguez. Marcus felt his pulse quicken as he watched this powerful woman gather herself, clearly preparing to say something that had been building in her mind during the past hour. "Marcus, in 34 years of living, 28 years of knowing my own mind, and 10 years of running this company, I've never met anyone, adult or child, who possessed the kind of intuitive intelligence your daughter showed tonight." Emma, who had been quietly reorganizing her crayons, looked up with bright, curious eyes. "What I'm about to propose might sound absolutely insane," Victoria continued, her voice gaining strength and conviction, "but I've built my entire business on trusting my instincts, and every instinct I have is screaming that this meeting tonight wasn't coincidence." Marcus's hands trembled slightly as he straightened Emma's coloring book, trying to appear calm while his mind raced through 1,000 possibilities. "What exactly are you suggesting, Ms. Sterling?" "I want to offer you a position, not just any position. I want you to become head of our facilities security division. Full benefits, salary of $85,000 annually, company housing assistance, and a college fund for Emma." The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He'd been making $23,000 a year as a janitor, struggling every month to afford Emma's daycare, living in a cramped apartment where the heat sometimes didn't work, and the walls were thin enough that Emma could hear their elderly neighbor's television all night. "But more importantly," Victoria continued, her eyes never leaving Emma, "I want to establish a special program, a children's advisory initiative where kids like Emma, kids who see things adults miss, can help us identify problems in our business practices." Emma's head tilted with that characteristic expression of deep thought that Marcus knew so well. "You want me to help catch more bad people?" I want you to help protect good people, Victoria corrected gently. Sometimes the most important truths come from the most unexpected places. Marcus felt his chest tighten with emotions he couldn't quite name. Pride, fear, hope, and desperation all swirled together as he looked at his daughter's eager face. For 3 years he'd been grinding through minimum wage jobs, taking whatever work he could find to provide for Emma, while fighting Jennifer's constant insinuations that he wasn't capable of being a proper father. Ms. Sterling, this is incredibly generous, but I need to understand. Why us? Why now? Victoria moved to the massive window overlooking the city, her silhouette sharp against the glittering lights below. 6 months ago, I discovered that my CFO had been embezzling funds for 2 years. Last month, I found out my head of marketing was selling our product development secrets to competitors. 2 weeks ago, my own cousin tried to forge my signature on documents that would have transferred controlling interest in the company to a shell corporation. She turned back to face them, her expression vulnerable yet determined. I've learned to trust financial reports, market analyses, and legal documents. But tonight, your 6-year-old daughter spotted a fraud that 3 different teams of adults missed. She read danger in a voice over the phone that trained security experts didn't catch. Emma had stopped coloring entirely now, sensing the weight of the adult conversation, even if she didn't understand all the implications. There's something else, Victoria said quietly. My father started this company when he was 25, the same age I was when he died and left me everything. He always told me that the most valuable employees weren't the ones with the most credentials. They were the ones who cared enough to do the right thing even when nobody was watching. Marcus felt tears burning behind his eyes. Emma, what do you think? Do you want to help Ms. Sterling? Emma looked between the 2 adults, her young mind working through concepts far beyond her years. Will I still get to spend time with you, Daddy? Every single day, Marcus promised. And will we help keep more families safe from bad people? That's exactly what we'd be doing, Victoria confirmed. Emma nodded with the solemn decisiveness that never failed to amaze her father. Then yes, but I have one question. What's that, sweetheart? Victoria asked. Can I bring my crayons to the new job? Victoria laughed, and for the first time since Marcus had met her an hour ago, she looked truly, genuinely happy. You can bring whatever makes you feel creative and confident. But even as they shook hands on this life-changing agreement, none of them noticed the figure watching from the stairwell, listening to every word with growing fury at seeing their carefully planned scheme unraveled by a child. 3 weeks had passed since that life-altering night, and Marcus still woke up some mornings convinced it had all been an elaborate dream. The modest but comfortable 2-bedroom apartment Victoria had helped them secure in a safe neighborhood felt like a palace compared to their previous cramped studio. Emma had her own room for the first time in her life, decorated with the princess theme she'd always wanted but they'd never been able to afford. Daddy, look, Emma called from her new desk, where she was carefully reviewing what Victoria had explained were simplified business reports, essentially picture-based summaries of company activities designed to tap into Emma's remarkable intuitive abilities. Marcus paused his morning routine of preparing for his new role as head of facilities security, a title that still felt surreal every time he said it. What did you find, sweetheart? Emma pointed to a photograph of a smiling man in an expensive suit shaking hands with Victoria outside Sterling Tower. This man makes my stomach feel funny, like when I ate too much ice cream at Jenny Morrison's birthday party. Marcus looked more closely at the image. According to the caption, this was Richard Blackstone, a potential business partner interested in a joint venture with Sterling Enterprises. The meeting had been scheduled for next Tuesday. What kind of funny feeling? Marcus asked, having learned over the past 3 weeks to take Emma's instincts very seriously. His smile doesn't match his eyes, Emma explained with the matter-of-fact tone she used when describing something obvious to her. It's like when mommy smiles at you during pickup, but her eyes are angry. Marcus felt a familiar chill run down his spine. Emma's ability to read micro-expressions and detect inconsistencies in people's behavior had proven uncannily accurate during her brief time as part of Victoria's advisory team. She'd already identified 2 employees who were padding their expense reports and flagged a vendor whose pricing seemed suspiciously inflated. Victoria had been amazed but not entirely surprised. Child psychologists have documented that kids Emma's age often pick up on deception better than adults because they haven't learned to rationalize away their gut instincts yet, she'd explained. Now, as Marcus looked at Richard Blackstone's photograph through Emma's eyes, he began to notice things he'd missed on first glance. The man's posture was slightly too rigid. His grip on Victoria's hand appeared stronger than necessary. And there was indeed something unsettling about the disconnect between his broad smile and his calculating gaze. We should tell Victoria, Marcus decided, reaching for his phone. But before he could dial, their apartment buzzer rang with unusual urgency. 3 short bursts, then a pause, then 3 more. It was the signal Victoria had established for emergency communications. Marcus hurried to the intercom. Victoria, what's wrong? Can I come up? We have a problem. Minutes later, Victoria burst through their door, her usually pristine appearance disheveled and her green eyes wide with concern. She was carrying a manila envelope thick with documents. Emma was right to be suspicious, she said without preamble. My security team finished running background checks on Richard Blackstone an hour ago. Emma looked up from her coloring, immediately sensing the tension in the room. He's one of the bad people, isn't he? Victoria knelt beside Emma's chair. Unfortunately, yes. It turns out Richard Blackstone is part of the same criminal network that tried to steal my company 3 weeks ago. They've regrouped and are trying a different approach. Marcus felt his stomach drop. What kind of approach? Victoria spread several documents across Emma's desk. Instead of forged contracts, they're using a more sophisticated con. Blackstone is presenting himself as a legitimate businessman interested in a partnership, but the real plan is to gain access to our internal systems, steal our client database, and sell it to our competitors. Emma studied the papers with surprising focus for a 6-year-old, her finger tracing over financial charts she couldn't possibly understand but somehow seemed to be analyzing instinctively. There's more, Victoria continued, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. My head of security discovered that they've been watching us. All of us. They know about Emma's role in stopping their first scheme and they're not happy about it. Marcus felt a surge of protective fury mixed with cold fear. Are you saying my daughter is in danger because she helped you? I'm saying we're all in danger until we stop them permanently, Victoria replied grimly. But I also think Emma might be the key to doing exactly that. Emma looked up from the documents with that eerily mature expression she sometimes wore. They don't know I can tell when grown-ups are lying just by looking at pictures, do they? Victoria smiled, despite the gravity of the situation. No, sweetheart, they don't. And that might be our biggest advantage. What are you proposing? Marcus asked, though part of him already suspected and dreaded the answer. The meeting with Blackstone is in 4 days. If we handle this right, we can not only protect the company, but gather enough evidence to shut down their entire operation. Victoria's eyes met Marcus's with steady determination. But it means putting Emma in a room with very dangerous people. Emma didn't hesitate. If it helps catch all the bad people so they can't hurt other families, then I want to do it. Marcus looked at his 6-year-old daughter, brave, intuitive, and determined to protect others, and felt his heart swell with pride and terror in equal measure. Outside their window, a black sedan that had been parked across the street for the past hour finally pulled away, its occupants having heard everything they needed through sophisticated listening devices. The trap was being set, but none of them were entirely sure who would be the hunter and who would be the prey. The next morning brought unexpected visitors and revelations that would shake the foundation of everything Marcus thought he understood about their situation. He was making Emma's breakfast when 3 sharp knocks echoed through their apartment, not the gentle tap of friends or the urgent buzzer of Victoria, but the authoritative sound of people who expected to be let in immediately. Marcus peered through the peephole and felt his blood run cold. 2 FBI agents stood in the hallway, their badges clearly visible, their expressions serious and professional. Emma, go to your room and close the door, Marcus instructed quietly, trying to keep the fear out of his voice. Daddy, are those the good police or the bad police? Emma asked with the perceptive directness that never ceased to amaze him. They're good police, sweetheart, but grown-ups need to talk about grown-up things. Emma nodded and disappeared into her room, but Marcus knew she'd probably press her ear to the door. She'd developed a habit of monitoring adult conversations ever since the divorce, a survival mechanism that helped her navigate the unpredictable emotional landscape of her parents' relationship. Marcus opened the door to find Special Agent Sarah Chen and Special Agent Michael Torres, both appearing to be in their late 30s, both wearing the kind of serious expressions that suggested this wasn't a social call. Mr. Rodriguez, I'm Agent Chen, this is Agent Torres. We need to speak with you about Victoria Sterling and some recent events involving your daughter. Marcus's hands began to tremble slightly as he gestured them into the modest living room. Is Victoria in some kind of trouble? Agent Torres consulted a small notebook. Mr. Rodriguez, are you aware that Sterling Enterprises has been under federal investigation for the past 6 months? The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. Investigation for what? Money laundering, tax evasion, and suspected connections to several international fraud schemes, Agent Chen explained, her voice professionally neutral, but not unkind. The Richard Blackstone situation you've become involved in is part of a much larger operation we've been tracking. Marcus sank into his second-hand sofa, his mind reeling. But Victoria said Blackstone was trying to steal from her company. She said she was the victim. That's what makes this case so complex, Agent Torres replied, settling into the chair across from Marcus. Our investigation suggests that Victoria Sterling may be playing both sides, presenting herself as a target while actually coordinating with the very criminals she claims to be fighting against. From Emma's room came the soft sound of crayons being set down too forcefully. She was definitely listening. That's impossible, Marcus protested, though even as he spoke, doubts began creeping into his mind. Emma saved her from a fraudulent contract. Victoria offered us jobs, helped us get this apartment, gave Emma opportunities. Agent Chen leaned forward. Mr. Rodriguez, what if I told you that the phone call your daughter answered 3 weeks ago might not have been the coincidence it appeared to be? Marcus felt the room begin to spin slightly. What do you mean? We believe Victoria Sterling orchestrated that entire encounter. The fraudulent contract your daughter helped expose was likely a setup designed to establish trust and bring you closer to the operation. The sound of Emma's bedroom door opening made all 3 adults turn. She appeared in the doorway, her small face pale but determined. Daddy, can I tell them something important? Marcus looked helplessly between his daughter and the federal agents. Emma, we talked about staying in your room, but Daddy, they're wrong about the nice lady. Agent Chen exchanged a glance with her partner, then addressed Emma directly. What makes you think we're wrong, sweetheart? Emma walked closer, clutching her favorite purple crayon like a talisman. Because I can tell when grown-ups are lying, and the nice lady never lies to me. But you're not lying either. You believe what you're saying is true. Agent Torres raised an eyebrow. That's a pretty sophisticated observation for someone your age. My daddy says I'm good at understanding people's feelings, Emma replied matter-of-factly. The nice lady feels scared and worried, but not guilty scared like people feel when they do bad things. She feels protective scared, like my daddy when he thinks I might get hurt. Marcus watched his daughter analyze the situation with growing amazement and terror. She was displaying the same intuitive gifts that had made her so valuable to Victoria, but now those gifts were being applied to a federal investigation. Agent Chen pulled out a tablet and showed Emma a series of photographs, surveillance images of Victoria meeting with various individuals over the past several months. Can you tell us what you see in these pictures, Emma? Emma studied each image carefully, her young face serious with concentration. After several minutes, she looked up with troubled eyes. Some of these people make her feel scared, but she's trying to hide it. And this one. She pointed to a photograph of Victoria shaking hands with a man in an expensive overcoat. This man makes her feel sick, like when I have to take medicine that tastes bad, but I know I need to take it anyway. Agent Torres made notes rapidly. What about this one? He showed her the original photograph of Richard Blackstone. Emma's reaction was immediate and visceral. She stepped backward, her small body tense with alarm. He's very dangerous, not just mean. Dangerous like fire or deep water, and he's angry at me specifically. The room fell silent as the implications of Emma's observations sank in. Agents, Marcus said quietly. If Victoria really is involved in criminal activity, and if dangerous people know my daughter helped stop their scheme, then Emma is in immediate danger regardless of whether Victoria is friend or enemy. Agent Chen nodded grimly. Which is why we're here, Mr. Rodriguez. We want to offer you and Emma protective custody while we sort this out. Emma looked between the adults with growing distress. But what about the nice lady? If bad people are trying to hurt her too, who's going to help her? It was a question none of the adults could answer, and as Marcus looked at his 6-year-old daughter's concerned face, he realized they were all walking into a trap that was far more complex and dangerous than any of them had imagined. The safe house was nothing like what Marcus had expected from television shows. Instead of a stark institutional building, the FBI had brought them to a comfortable suburban home in Alexandria, Virginia, complete with a backyard swing set and neighbors who waved from their front porches. Agent Chen explained that the best hiding places were often the most ordinary ones. Emma had been quiet during the 2-hour drive, clutching her coloring book and stealing worried glances at her father. Now, as Agent Torres showed them around the house, she finally voiced the question that had been building in her young mind. Agent Chen, if we're hiding from bad people, does that mean the nice lady is hiding too? Agent Chen knelt to Emma's level, her professional demeanor softening slightly. Emma, we're not entirely sure where Ms. Sterling is right now. That's part of what we're trying to figure out. What Agent Chen didn't say, what she couldn't say to a 6-year-old, was that Victoria Sterling had vanished completely 12 hours ago. Her apartment was empty, her office cleared out, and her personal accounts had been closed. Either she was running from danger, or she was running from justice. Marcus unpacked their hastily gathered belongings while Emma explored her temporary bedroom, which had been decorated with thoughtful touches, children's books on the nightstand, crayons and paper on the small desk, and even a stuffed animal that looked remarkably similar to the teddy bear she'd had to leave behind in their rushed departure. "Daddy," Emma called from the window. "There's a lady across the street who keeps looking at our house." Marcus joined her at the window, his heart rate immediately accelerating. A woman in dark sunglasses was indeed watching their house from beside a parked SUV, making no attempt to appear casual about her surveillance. "Agent Chen," Marcus called urgently. But when Agent Chen arrived at the window, the woman and the SUV were gone. "Could have been a neighbor," Agent Torres suggested, though his hand had instinctively moved to his weapon. "We'll do a perimeter check." As the agent stepped outside, Emma tugged on her father's shirt. "Daddy, that wasn't a neighbor." "How do you know, sweetheart?" "Because neighbors don't stand like soldiers and they don't have angry eyes even when they're far away." Marcus felt the familiar chill that came with recognizing Emma's uncanny accuracy. "What else did you notice about her?" Emma was quiet for a moment, processing observations with the intensity she usually reserved for her most complex coloring projects. She was looking at our house the way the bad man in the picture looked at the nice lady, like she was planning something. Before Marcus could respond, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Your daughter cost us $50 million. The debt will be paid." Marcus's hand shook as he showed the message to Agent Chen, who had just returned from checking the perimeter. "We're moving you," Agent Chen decided immediately. "Pack only what Emma needs. We leave in 10 minutes. But as Marcus hurried to gather Emma's things, she remained at the window, her small face pressed against the glass with an expression of intense concentration. "Emma, we need to go." "Daddy, wait." Her voice carried an urgency he'd learned never to ignore. "The nice lady is coming." Marcus rushed to the window and saw nothing but empty street and afternoon shadows. "Emma, there's nobody there." "She's not here yet," Emma explained patiently, "but she's coming to help us. I can feel it." Agent Torres appeared in the doorway. "Mr. Rodriguez, we have multiple vehicles approaching the perimeter. We need to move now." As if summoned by Emma's prediction, Victoria Sterling's silver Mercedes appeared at the end of the street, driving fast but not recklessly. Behind her, at least 3 black SUVs were in obvious pursuit. "My God," Agent Chen breathed, speaking rapidly into her radio. "All units, we have civilians in immediate danger. Request backup at safe house location." Victoria's car screeched to a halt in front of the house and she leaped out, her business attire replaced by jeans and a bulletproof vest, her usually perfect hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. "Emma! Marcus!" she shouted toward the house. "You have about 30 seconds before this street becomes a war zone." Emma looked up at her father with absolute certainty in her dark eyes. "See, Daddy? I told you she was one of the good people." Marcus scooped Emma into his arms and ran toward the door, Agent Chen flanking them with her weapon drawn. Whatever was happening, whatever danger they were all running from, his 6-year-old daughter had somehow seen it coming. As they reached Victoria's car, the first gunshots rang out from the pursuing vehicles. Emma buried her face against her father's shoulder and whispered, "The bad people are really angry now." Victoria gunned the engine, and they sped away from the safe house that had lasted less than 4 hours, racing toward a confrontation that would determine whether Emma's gift for reading people would save them all, or make them targets for the rest of their lives. The abandoned warehouse on the outskirts of Alexandria felt like something from Emma's worst nightmares, but Victoria assured them it was the safest place they could be, while Agent Chen coordinated with her FBI team. Emma sat cross-legged on a blanket Victoria had produced from her emergency kit, her coloring book open but her crayons untouched as she listened to the adults planning their next move. "Victoria, I need the truth," Marcus demanded, his voice tight with exhaustion and fear. "The FBI thinks you're part of this criminal network. Emma insists you're innocent, and my daughter has been right about everything so far." Victoria paced the concrete floor, her footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. "The truth is complicated, Marcus. Yes, I've been working with federal agents for the past 8 months, but not as a suspect, as an undercover asset. Agent Chen looked up from her tactical communication device. Ms. Sterling is what we call a cooperating witness. Her father's company was infiltrated by this criminal organization 5 years ago, shortly before his death. Emma's head snapped up with sudden understanding. Your daddy died because of the bad people, didn't he? Victoria's composure cracked slightly. My father discovered that several of his most trusted employees were using Sterling Enterprises to launder money for an international crime syndicate. When he tried to expose them, he died in what everyone believed was a car accident. But you knew it wasn't an accident, Emma said softly, displaying the emotional intelligence that never failed to amaze the adults around her. I knew, but I couldn't prove it. So I spent 3 years pretending to be the naive young heiress while secretly gathering evidence. The FBI approached me 8 months ago when their investigation finally connected to mine. Marcus felt pieces of a massive puzzle clicking into place. So the night Emma answered your phone was completely genuine, Victoria confirmed. Richard Blackstone and his people had been planning that fraud for months. They just didn't know I was already working with federal agents to bring them down. Agent Chen's radio crackled with urgent communications. All units, we have movement on the south perimeter. Multiple vehicles approaching the warehouse district. Emma stood up abruptly, her small body tense with alarm. They found us. How is that possible? Marcus asked, though he was already lifting Emma into his arms. Victoria's face went pale as realization dawned. The text message they sent to your phone. They're tracking us through your cell signal. Agent Chen was already moving toward the warehouse exit. Everyone out now. We have maybe 2 minutes before they surround the building. But as they reached the door, Emma grabbed Victoria's arm with surprising strength. Wait, something's wrong. Emma, we don't have time, Marcus started. No, Daddy, something's really wrong. Emma's dark eyes were wide with the kind of fear he'd only seen once before, during the worst night of his divorce proceedings when Jennifer had threatened to take Emma away permanently. The bad people aren't just chasing us. They're hurting us. Victoria froze. What do you mean, sweetheart? Emma pointed toward the 3 exits Agent Chen had been surveying. They want us to run toward the back door. That's where the really bad things are waiting. Agent Chen spoke rapidly into her radio, then turned to the group with grim confirmation. Thermal imaging shows heat signatures positioned at all exits except the main entrance. The child is right. They're trying to funnel us into a trap. So what do we do? Marcus asked, holding Emma tighter. Emma wiggled down from her father's arms and walked purposefully toward a pile of shipping containers stacked near the east wall. We go up. Victoria followed Emma's gaze and saw what the 6-year-old had spotted. A series of containers arranged like steps, leading to a skylight that appeared to be accessible from the roof of the highest container. That's incredibly dangerous, Agent Chen protested. More dangerous than walking into an ambush? Emma asked with devastating logic. Victoria was already testing the stability of the first container. She's right, and they won't expect us to go up because most adults wouldn't consider it. As the sound of vehicles grew closer, Marcus made the hardest decision of his life. Okay, Emma, you lead the way. What followed was the most terrifying 10 minutes of Marcus's existence. Watching his 6-year-old daughter climb makeshift steps made of shipping containers, with gunshots beginning to echo from the warehouse entrances below. But Emma moved with the fearless confidence of childhood. And when they finally crawled through the skylight onto the warehouse roof, Marcus realized his daughter hadn't just saved their lives again. She'd proven that sometimes the most unconventional thinking comes from the purest hearts. Now what? Now, Victoria whispered as they crouched on the roof, watching black-clad figures storm the empty warehouse below. Emma pointed toward the neighboring building, where a maintenance ladder led down to what appeared to be a delivery truck parked in shadows. Now we become invisible, Emma said simply, already moving toward their next escape route. Marcus followed his daughter across rooftops in the growing darkness, marveling at how a 6-year-old had become their best strategist in a battle against international criminals. The delivery truck belonged to Martinez Brothers Construction, and the keys were exactly where Emma had somehow intuited they would be, tucked inside the front wheel well. As Victoria started the engine, Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that his daughter's lucky guesses were becoming too frequent and too accurate to be mere chance. Emma, how did you know about the keys? He asked as they drove through back roads away from the warehouse district. Emma was busy coloring again, her crayon movements precise and methodical. The man who drives this truck has the same worry lines around his eyes that you used to have before we got the new apartment. People who worry about losing their jobs hide backup keys in case they lock themselves out. Agent Chen, who was monitoring police communications from the passenger seat, looked back at Emma with growing amazement. You deduced all that from looking at a parked truck? And there was a family picture taped to the dashboard, Emma added matter-of-factly. People with families always plan for emergencies. Victoria navigated toward what she explained was a secondary safe location, a small farm owned by Agent Chen's retired partner, 40 minutes outside the city. But as they drove, Marcus noticed Emma becoming increasingly agitated, her coloring becoming more frantic and less precise. What's wrong, sweetheart? Emma looked up with troubled eyes. The really bad person isn't with the other bad people who were chasing us. What do you mean? Victoria asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. All those people at the warehouse were scared angry, like when kids at school are mean because someone bigger is being mean to them first. But the person who makes all the decisions, the one who hurt your daddy, they're somewhere else, planning something worse. Agent Chen's radio suddenly erupted with frantic communications. All units, we have a situation at Sterling Tower. Hostage situation in progress. Multiple civilians trapped on the 42nd floor. Victoria slammed on the brakes, her face draining of color. That's my executive floor. My entire senior staff works late on Thursdays. It's a trap, Agent Chen said immediately. They're using your employees as bait to draw you out. But Emma was already shaking her head. It's not just a trap for the nice lady. It's a trap for me. The adults exchanged alarmed glances. What do you mean, Emma? Marcus asked gently. The really bad person knows I can tell when people are lying. They think if they hurt innocent people, I'll have to come help, and then they can catch me. Victoria's hands gripped the steering wheel until her knuckles turned white. They're using children's natural empathy as a weapon. More than that, Agent Chen realized with growing horror. They're banking on the fact that Emma's gift is so valuable. She'll feel responsible for saving people even when it puts her in danger. Emma set down her crayon and looked at each adult with the solemn expression that Marcus had learned. Meant she was about to say something profound. But they made a mistake. What kind of mistake? Victoria asked. They think I'll come because I feel sorry for the scared people. But that's not why I'll come. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. Emma, we are not going anywhere near that building. Yes, we are, Daddy. Because the really bad person made their biggest mistake of all. Which is? Agent Chen prompted, though her expression suggested she was dreading the answer. Emma's voice carried a steely determination that seemed impossible in someone so young. They hurt the nice lady's daddy, and now they're trying to hurt her family at work. Nobody should have to be scared at work like my daddy used to be. Victoria pulled the truck over to the side of the road, her emotions threatening to overwhelm her professional composure. Emma, you don't understand how dangerous this person is. They've killed before. They won't hesitate to hurt a child. I know, Emma replied simply, but they don't understand how dangerous I am. The statement sent chills through all three adults. Not because Emma sounded threatening. She still looked like any other 6-year-old with her princess coloring book and purple crayon clutched in her small hand. But because her quiet confidence suggested she understood something about this situation that the adults were missing. What aren't you telling us, Emma? Marcus asked softly. Emma looked directly at her father, and for a moment Marcus saw something in his daughter's eyes that seemed far older than her 6 years. I know who the really bad person is, Daddy. I've known since the first night when I answered the phone. How is that possible? Victoria whispered. Because, Emma said, returning to her coloring with devastating calm, they've been watching us for a lot longer than 3 weeks, and they made the mistake of letting me see them before they knew what I could see in return. Agent Chen's radio crackled with updates from Sterling Tower, where the hostage situation was escalating rapidly, but Marcus could only stare at his daughter, realizing that everything they thought they knew about their situation was about to change again. The revelation came as Emma carefully selected a red crayon and began coloring what appeared to be a simple drawing of their old apartment building. But as Marcus watched, he realized she wasn't just drawing from memory. She was documenting surveillance that she'd observed, but never mentioned. Emma, show us what you mean, Victoria said gently, pulling the truck into an abandoned gas station where they could talk without being overheard. Emma turned her coloring book toward the adults, revealing a detailed sketch that was far more sophisticated than typical 6-year-old artwork. The drawing showed their former apartment building with a dark sedan parked across the street, a woman with long black hair sitting inside, and even the distinctive antenna configuration of surveillance equipment. She was there every Tuesday and Thursday when we went to work with you, Emma explained to Victoria. At first I thought she was just waiting for someone, but then I noticed she wrote things down every time we left the building. Agent Chen studied the drawing with professional interest. Emma, How long had you been seeing this woman? Emma's brow furrowed with concentration. Since right after Christmas, but she wasn't trying to be hidden then. She wanted me to see her. Marcus felt ice forming in his stomach. Wanted you to see her? Why? Because she was testing if I would notice things that grown-ups miss. Like a test at school, but sneaky. Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Emma, did this woman ever try to talk to you? Not exactly. But one time when Daddy was getting groceries, she got out of her car and pretended to tie her shoe near our building. She was really trying to see if I would tell Daddy about her. Did you? Agent Chen asked. Emma shook her head solemnly. I knew it would make Daddy worry, and he was already worried about lots of things. But I watched her back to see what she would do. And what did she do? Emma selected a black crayon and added details to her drawing. Details that made all three adults lean closer with growing alarm. She made a phone call, and then she smiled. But it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile people make when they think they're smarter than everyone else. Victoria's hand trembled as she pointed to a figure Emma had drawn near the surveillance car. Emma, was there ever anyone else with this woman? Sometimes a man in expensive clothes came to talk to her. He never got out of his own car, just pulled up next to hers. Emma began a new drawing, this one showing two vehicles and stick figures that somehow managed to convey distinct personalities despite their simplicity. Agent Chen's radio buzzed with an urgent update. Command, we have confirmation that the hostage situation is a setup. The hostages appear to be actors, and the real Sterling employees were evacuated hours ago. So it really is a trap specifically for us, Victoria concluded. But Emma was shaking her head again. Not just for us. For you specifically, nice lady. The woman in the car, she's angry at you for something that happened a long time ago. Emma, I've never seen this woman before in my life. Emma's expression grew sad as she added final details to her latest drawing. She used to work for your daddy. Before he died. The silence in the truck was deafening. Victoria's face had gone completely white, and Agent Chen was frantically checking files on her tablet. That's impossible, Victoria whispered. Everyone who worked for my father was thoroughly investigated after his death. What was her name, Emma? Agent Chen asked urgently. Emma looked confused for a moment. I don't know her name, but I know she used to make your daddy feel the same kind of sad worried that she makes you feel now. Victoria's hands began to shake as memories began flooding back. There was a woman, Rebecca Morrison. She was my father's assistant for 7 years. She was questioned after his death but cleared of any involvement. Agent Chen was typing rapidly. Rebecca Morrison, age 34, former executive assistant to James Sterling. Disappeared 6 months after Sterling's death. Current whereabouts unknown. But why would she wait 5 years to come after me? Victoria asked. Emma looked up from her coloring with the matter-of-fact expression she used when explaining obvious things to confused adults. Because she wasn't ready before. She needed to learn how to hurt people the way your daddy accidentally hurt her. My father never hurt anyone intentionally, Victoria protested. Not hurt, Emma clarified patiently. Heart hurt. The way my mommy felt heart hurt when she found out Daddy's friend Tommy was more important to him than she was. Marcus felt the pieces clicking together with sickening clarity. Emma, are you saying this Rebecca person was in love with Victoria's father? Emma nodded solemnly. And when he died, she blamed the nice lady for not protecting him. But really, she's most angry at herself for not being brave enough to tell him how she felt before the bad things happened. Victoria slumped against the driver's seat as understanding dawned. She's not just trying to steal my company. She's trying to destroy everything my father built because she thinks I don't deserve to have what she lost. Emma's final drawing was the most detailed yet. A woman standing alone outside Sterling Tower, holding what appeared to be a detonator. That's why the hostage thing is fake, Emma said quietly. She doesn't want to hurt innocent people. She just wants to hurt you the way she's been hurting since your daddy died. Agent Chen was already calling for backup and bomb disposal units, but Emma wasn't finished. There's one more thing, she said, her voice carrying a weight that seemed impossible for a 6-year-old. She's not planning to live through tonight. She thinks if she can't have your daddy, then you shouldn't get to have his love either. The Sterling Tower evacuation was proceeding smoothly when Rebecca Morrison made her first and only mistake. She underestimated a 6-year-old's capacity for strategic thinking. While FBI negotiators kept her occupied through building communications, Emma had been quietly studying the architectural plans Agent Chen had pulled up on her tablet. She's not in the building, Emma announced suddenly, causing all the adults to stop their frantic planning. What do you mean? Victoria asked. The thermal imaging shows heat signatures on the 42nd floor. Emma shook her head with patient certainty. Those are fake heat things. She's somewhere she can see the whole building but stay safe when the explodey things happen. Agent Chen checked her tactical displays. All surveillance shows the subject contained within the building perimeter. She's not lying, Marcus said firmly, having learned to trust his daughter's instincts completely. Emma, where do you think she is? Emma pointed to the construction crane visible in the background of the news footage streaming on Agent Chen's device. Up there, where your daddy used to take you to see the whole city, Victoria gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. The Meridian Building construction site. My father took me there when I was 8 years old, right before they finished it. He said someday I'd build something even taller. Rebecca would have known about that memory, Agent Chen realized. As his assistant, she would have been privy to personal conversations. But Emma was already grabbing her coloring supplies, moving with the purposeful determination that had become familiar to the adults over the past month. We need to go talk to her. Absolutely not, Marcus said immediately. Emma, this woman is planning to blow up a building. She's dangerous. She's not dangerous to me, Emma replied with calm certainty. She's dangerous to the nice lady because she thinks the nice lady stole her happiness. But she's not angry at little kids. Victoria knelt beside Emma, her voice gentle but firm. Sweetheart, even if you're right, we can't risk putting you in danger. Emma looked up with eyes that seemed far too mature for her small face. But don't you see I'm the only one who can help her stop being so sad? What do you mean? Agent Chen asked, though she was already dreading the answer. Emma selected her purple crayon, her favorite, and began drawing with swift, confident strokes. Grown-ups who are sad for a long time sometimes forget that other people can be sad too. She thinks she's the only person who misses your daddy. The drawing that emerged showed 2 stick figures standing together, one tall, one small, both with tears drawn carefully beneath their eyes. She doesn't know that you miss him too, Emma continued, addressing Victoria directly. She thinks you only care about the company and the money, not about loving your daddy. Victoria's composure finally cracked completely. But I was only 10 when he died. I barely understood what was happening. I spent years feeling guilty that I couldn't save him. I know, Emma said softly. That's why you need to tell her. But she won't listen to grown-up words from you. She's too angry. Agent Chen was monitoring multiple communication channels, her expression growing more urgent by the minute. Whatever we're going to do, we need to decide quickly. She's given us a 30-minute deadline before she triggers the explosives. Emma stood up, clutching her coloring book with determination. I need to show her something. Emma, no, Marcus said. But his daughter was already moving toward the door. Daddy, remember when I was really mad at you after the divorce because I thought you didn't love Mommy anymore, and you showed me the pictures of when you were happy together? Marcus felt his heart clench at the memory. Yes, sweetheart. That lady needs to see pictures too. Pictures that show the nice lady loved her daddy just as much as she did, but in a different way. Victoria's eyes widened with sudden understanding. The photo albums. My father kept photo albums in his office safe. Pictures of me growing up, father-daughter moments, things Rebecca might not have seen. More than that, Emma added, her voice carrying the wisdom that never failed to amaze the adults around her. She needs to see that you became the kind of person your daddy would be proud of, that you didn't waste his love. Agent Chen made the decision that would either save lives or end them all. We're going up that crane. But Emma stays in the vehicle until we assess the situation. Emma nodded agreement, but Marcus could see the determined glint in her eyes that meant she was already planning something the adults wouldn't approve of. As they drove toward the Meridian Building, Emma quietly tore a page from her coloring book, a drawing she'd been working on for weeks without showing anyone. It was a picture of a man in a business suit standing next to a small girl, both of them smiling with carefully written words at the bottom. Sometimes people we love have to go away, but the love stays forever. It was a picture of herself and her daddy, but Marcus realized it could represent any father and child who had been separated too soon. Emma folded the drawing carefully and tucked it into her pocket, preparing for the most important conversation of her young life. The construction crane towered 30 stories above the city, its skeletal frame silhouetted against storm clouds that had been gathering throughout the evening. Rebecca Morrison stood on the operator's platform, 400 feet above ground, with clear sightlines to Sterling Tower and a dead man's switch clutched in her right hand. Agent Chen's team had established a perimeter at the base of the crane, but everyone knew that any attempt to climb up would result in immediate detonation of the explosives Rebecca had placed throughout Sterling Tower. She's got thermal sensors rigged to the crane access ladder, Agent Chen reported grimly. The moment anyone starts climbing, she'll know. Victoria paced frantically in the command vehicle, clutching the photo albums she'd retrieved from her father's office safe. There has to be another way up there. Emma, who had been unusually quiet during the 15-minute drive, suddenly spoke up from the back seat. There is. All the adults turned to look at her. The window washers use a different ladder on the outside of the building next door. It goes almost as high as the crane. Agent Chen checked her architectural plans. She's right. The Meridian building has external maintenance access that would put us within 50 feet of the crane platform. That's still too far, Marcus protested. And there's no way to cross that gap safely. Emma was studying the crane through the vehicle's window with intense concentration. We don't need to cross the gap. We just need to be close enough for her to hear us. Emma, your voice won't carry that far in this wind, Victoria said gently. Not my voice, Emma replied, pointing to the megaphone attached to Agent Chen's tactical gear. And not just words. She held up her coloring book, flipped to a page she'd been working on during the drive. It was a detailed drawing of Sterling Tower with tiny stick figures visible in the windows, figures representing all the employees who had been safely evacuated. She thinks she's saving people by stopping the bad company, but she needs to see that the company isn't bad anymore, that it's full of good people who have families and kids and dreams. Agent Chen made the tactical decision that would either end the standoff or escalate it beyond control. Morrison, this is Agent Chen. We're sending someone up to talk with you. No weapons, no tricks, just conversation. Rebecca's voice crackled over the radio they'd managed to establish. Send Sterling, alone. Anyone else approaches and I trigger the charges. I can't let Victoria go up there alone, Marcus said immediately. But Emma was already unbuckling her seatbelt. She won't be alone. Emma, absolutely not, Victoria protested. You said she's not dangerous to little kids, Emma reminded her. And you need me because I can tell if she's lying about being willing to listen. Agent Chen looked between Marcus and his daughter, recognizing the same stubborn determination in both their faces. If we do this, Emma stays back from the platform edge, and we maintain constant radio contact. The climb up the Meridian building's external maintenance ladder was the most terrifying experience of Victoria's life, made worse by the knowledge that a 6-year-old was climbing behind her, carrying a coloring book and a purple crayon as if they were going to a routine meeting. When they reached the platform level with the crane, Victoria could see Rebecca clearly for the first time in 5 years. Her father's former assistant looked exhausted, hollow-eyed and desperate, but not unhinged. She was a woman who had planned every detail meticulously and was prepared to follow through. Rebecca, Victoria called across the 50-foot gap. I brought something to show you. Rebecca's laugh was bitter. What could you possibly show me that would matter now? Victoria held up the first photo album. Pictures my father kept of me growing up. Pictures that show how much he loved me and how much I loved him. I don't care about your privileged childhood, Rebecca shouted back. That's when Emma stepped forward, her small voice somehow carrying clearly in the wind. But you do care that she misses her daddy just like you miss him. Rebecca's expression changed immediately upon seeing Emma. What is a child doing up here? I'm here because grown-ups sometimes forget that being sad doesn't mean you have to make other people sad too. Emma called back with the fearless honesty that had become her trademark. Emma held up her coloring book, open to the drawing she'd made during the drive. See all these people in the building? They all have people who love them, just like you loved Mr. Sterling. For the first time since the standoff began, Rebecca's hand holding the dead man's switch began to tremble. You don't understand, Rebecca called back, her voice breaking. He was everything to me, and she got to have his love every day while I watched from the outside. Emma's response would determine whether the night ended in tragedy or healing. But love isn't like pizza, where if someone else gets a piece, there's less for you. Love grows bigger when you share it. The silence that followed was broken only by the wind whistling through the crane's metal framework. Emma's words hung in the air between the crane and the building, carried by a wind that seemed to pause, waiting for Rebecca Morrison's response. For 30 seconds that felt like hours. The only sounds were the distant hum of the city below and the soft creaking of metal under stress. Then Rebecca's voice, much quieter now, drifted across the gap. How does a 6-year-old know about love and loss? Emma clutched her purple crayon tighter, drawing strength from its familiar weight. Because my mommy and daddy used to love each other, and then they stopped. But they both still love me. So I learned that love can change shape, but it doesn't have to disappear. Victoria seized the moment, her voice steady despite her fear. Rebecca, my father talked about you all the time. He said you were the most dedicated person he'd ever worked with. He trusted you with everything. Trust isn't love, Rebecca replied, but her voice lacked the venom it had carried moments before. Emma stepped closer to the platform edge, ignoring Agent Chen's frantic radio warnings. Mr. Sterling did love you, just not the same way he loved his little girl. But that doesn't mean it wasn't real love. How could you possibly know that? Rebecca asked, and for the first time she sounded more curious than angry. Emma opened her coloring book to a drawing she'd made weeks ago without understanding its significance. A picture of a man in a business suit standing between two figures. A small girl holding his hand and a woman standing slightly apart but clearly important to him. Because, Emma called across the gap, the nice lady told me her daddy always said that the best people in his life were the ones who helped him take care of the things he loved most. That was you. You helped him take care of his company so he could spend time taking care of his daughter. Victoria's eyes filled with tears as she realized Emma had understood something about her father's relationship with Rebecca that she herself had missed. She's right, Rebecca. You weren't just his assistant. You were his partner in protecting everything he'd built. Rebecca's grip on the dead man's switch loosened slightly, but when he died, no one asked me to the funeral. No one thought I had the right to grieve. That was wrong, Emma said simply. Grown-ups sometimes make mistakes about who gets to be sad when someone dies, but being sad together is better than being sad alone. Victoria made a decision that could cost her everything. She set down the photo albums and stepped back from the platform edge. Rebecca, I'm going to show you something, but you have to promise not to detonate anything until you see it. Victoria, what are you doing? Agent Chen's voice crackled over the radio. Victoria ignored the radio and called to Rebecca. I'm going to throw you something. It's small, and it won't hurt anyone. She pulled a folded piece of paper from her pocket, a letter she'd written to her father every year on the anniversary of his death, but never shared with anyone. Catch, Victoria called, and threw the paper across the gap. Rebecca caught it automatically, her eyes never leaving Victoria's face. As she unfolded the letter and began to read, her expression changed from suspicion to shock, to something that looked almost like relief. Emma couldn't see what the letter said, but she could see Rebecca's face soften as she read. What did you write to your daddy? Victoria's voice was thick with emotion. I wrote that I missed him every day, that I was sorry I couldn't save him, that I hoped I was making him proud by taking care of his company and his employees, and that I wished I could thank Rebecca Morrison for being such a good friend to him when I was too young to understand what he needed. Rebecca's hand began to shake as she reached the end of the letter. You wrote this about me? Every year for 5 years, Victoria confirmed. I never knew how to find you to say it in person. Emma watched Rebecca's face transform as years of anger and grief began to crack, revealing the profound sadness underneath. Sometimes people need permission to stop being angry, Emma observed quietly. Rebecca looked directly at Emma, this small child who had somehow become the catalyst for everything that was happening. What do you think I should do? Emma's answer was immediate and certain. I think you should come down and help the nice lady take care of your daddy's company the right way. Together. Rebecca stood silent for a long moment, looking between the dead man's switch in her hand and the little girl who had offered her something she'd never thought to ask for, partnership instead of revenge. Finally, she set the detonator down on the crane platform and raised her hands in surrender. Agent Chen, she called toward the building, I'm ready to come down now, and I want to tell you everything about the people who really killed James Sterling. As FBI agents swarmed up both sides of the crane to secure the explosives and escort Rebecca down safely, Emma turned to Victoria with a satisfied smile. See? Sometimes the best way to catch bad people is to help sad people stop being sad. Victoria knelt beside Emma on the maintenance platform, 400 feet above the city, and pulled the little girl into a hug that conveyed gratitude beyond words. Emma Rodriguez, she whispered, you just taught me that sometimes the smallest voices carry the most important truths. 3 months later, Rebecca Morrison was working as Victoria's director of security, using her insider knowledge to help FBI agents dismantle the criminal network that had killed James Sterling. Marcus had been promoted to vice president of corporate safety, and Emma continued her role as special advisor for interpersonal relations, a title that perfectly described her gift for understanding what people really needed. Emma kept her purple crayon in her desk drawer at Sterling Tower, ready for the next time someone needed help seeing that love shared was always better than love lost. Sometimes the most powerful force in the world comes in the smallest packages. wrapped in the fearless honesty of a child who believes everyone deserves a chance to choose love over anger. And sometimes, that's exactly what the world needs most.